Beyond its striking looks, Tower Bridge was a triumph of engineering ingenuity. At the core of its design was the bascule mechanism, the drawbridge that could lift to allow ships through. The term bascule comes from the French word for a seesaw, and indeed, each half of the road deck pivots around a massive axle set in the base of the tower, much like a child's seesaw. What made Tower Bridge's bascules remarkable was their scale and balance. Each leaf of the roadway is 100 feet long and weighs about 1,070 tons, including its counterweight and roadway. Yet thanks to giant underground counterweights that exactly balance the span, relatively little force is needed to swing them open. When operating properly, two men with their hands on control levers could, by triggering the hydraulic system, raise the entire span to its full 82-degree angle in just about 5 minutes. In the 1890s, this lifting power was achieved with a state-of-the-art steam hydraulic system. Let us imagine a ship approaching Tower Bridge in those early years. As it neared, it would signal its arrival. By law, vessels had to request a bridge lift in advance, and the bridge staff would halt road traffic well in time. Red semaphore signals, and later red lights, would be displayed to stop carriages, and a warning bell rang out on the roadway. On the river, a tugboat was often on station to assist sailing ships through the opening. Down in the bridge's engine rooms, an alert would come, perhaps a clang on a brass bell, and the resident engineers sprang into action. First, steam had to be available at the ready. Tower Bridge's engine rooms housed several coal-fired boilers, tended around the clock by stokers. These boilers fed two mighty steam-pumping engines. When a bridge lift was needed, the engineers opened valves, sending pressurized steam into the pumping engines. With a chuff and hiss, the pistons began to pump, powering water pumps that charged the system's 6 big accumulators. These accumulators were essentially heavy iron weights on top of water-filled cylinders. As water was forced in, the weight rose, storing energy by compressing the water pressure up to 750 pounds per square inch. Now primed with high-pressure water, the final step was to release that pressure to the drive engines attached to the bascules. When the bridge operator moved the control levers, pressurized water surged into enormous hydraulic rams and motors in the bowels of the bridge. These in turn engaged a set of 8 large cogs, 4 per bascule. The cogs bit into racks beneath the roadway, and the bascules began to rise. Imagine standing within the tower during a lift. You'd hear the deep groaning of machinery reverberating through the steel structure, the hiss of valves and the rush of water in pipes. The deck above your head would slowly tilt upward, and daylight would appear in the seam as the two leaves separated. Outside, spectators watched in quiet awe as this massive bridge split in half, the two roadways lifting skyward like a pair of giant arms. In about 3 to 5 minutes, the bascules would reach their full open position, roughly forming a wide V shape. The waiting ship, perhaps a grand clipper with towering masts, would glide through, her crew looking up at the exposed girders and machinery inside the bridge's belly. Once clear, another signal would send the water pressure back to the system, and the bascules would gracefully descend to reunite and form a road once again. The traffic gates would reopen, and London's bustle resumed as if nothing extraordinary had happened. This entire process was a marvel of reliability. In the bridge's first decades, with port traffic still heavy, such lifts occurred dozens of times per week. The accumulators and steam engines ensured that even if a ship arrived on short notice, Tower Bridge could lift promptly without having to wait long to build steam. The London Hydraulic Power Company network even provided backup pressure so that the bridge's system could tap city hydraulics in a pinch. It was said that Tower Bridge's machinery was so well designed that breakdowns were rare. Engineers performed drills and maintenance regularly, and the massive engines, painted green and gleaming with brass fittings, became an attraction in their own right. Today, these original steam engines are beautifully preserved in the Tower Bridge Museum, silent but intact. The bridge's pedestrian facilities were also notable. 2 high-level walkways connect the towers at the top, intended to allow foot traffic to cross even when the bridge was open. These walkways, narrow and open air in the 1890s, proved less popular than hoped. Most people preferred to wait on the roadway for the short duration of a ship passing rather than climb the long stairs up and down. As a result, the lofty catwalks often stood almost empty. They gained a reputation as haunts for loiterers, Even pickpockets and other unsavory characters found refuge there, out of sight of police. In 1910, the authorities decided to close the high-level walkways due to lack of use and some sordid activity up there. For many decades thereafter, those upper passages were closed off, effectively forgotten by ordinary Londoners. They would eventually reopen, but not until the bridge's renaissance as a tourist site in the 1980s. As the 20th century progressed, Tower Bridge remained a vital artery and a proud landmark, but the world around it changed dramatically. The bustling Victorian port that the bridge was built to serve gradually quieted. Ships grew larger and began to dock further downstream or in new docks away from central London. By the mid-20th century, the Pool of London saw far fewer sailing ships and cargo vessels. The bridge that had opened over 6,000 times in 1894 opened only a few hundred times a year by the 1960s. Road traffic, on the other hand, grew heavier with the rise of motor vehicles. Tower Bridge took on a new role as a key roadway for an automobile age, and its timber deck and Victorian ironwork had to bear increasing loads. Despite 2 world wars and countless storms and seasons, Tower Bridge proved resilient. It even survived direct bombardment during World War II. Because it was an important transport link to the Port of London, it was targeted in the Blitz. In December 1940, a German bomb struck the high-level walkway, badly damaging the steel lattice and severing some of the hydraulic lines. The bridge was temporarily put out of action until repairs could be made. Then in April 1941, a parachute mine detonated near the bridge, causing further damage. It blew out windows, bent parts of the bascule structure, and damaged the southern approach. The blasts even shook the massive engines in their chambers. To ensure the bridge could still operate if machinery was bombed, a third backup steam engine was installed in 1942 as a precaution. This extra engine was never actually needed for war service and today resides in a museum. Through it all, Tower Bridge stood firm. Contemporary photos show the bridge with some scarring, but still spanning defiantly while fires raged in the docks downstream. It became a powerful symbol of London's endurance, the medieval tower and its Victorian namesake bridge both surviving the onslaught. In peacetime, one of the most famous episodes in Tower Bridge's history occurred on a foggy morning of 30 December 1952. As usual, a watchman was supposed to halt road traffic and announce a coming bridge lift with warning bells. On this day, a relief watchman made a grave error. He began raising the south bascule before the road was clear. At that moment, a double-decker London bus, Route 78, was still on the bridge, chugging from the south side. The driver, Albert Gunter, saw the roadway in front of him suddenly moving and opening up. In a split second, he made a heroic decision. He accelerated hard. The bus leapt forward as the gap widened. In a movie-like stunt come to life, the bus jumped across the 3-foot, 1-meter gap, landing on the north bascule, which had not yet begun to rise. The bus dropped about 6 feet onto the far side but miraculously remained upright. Only minor injuries were reported, a broken leg for the conductor and some bruises to passengers and driver. Gunter's quick thinking saved everyone from a potentially deadly fall into the river. He became a modest London hero and was awarded £10 for bravery, a small fortune for a busman in those days. The incident prompted improved safety procedures, but it also entered London lore as the day a bus jumped Tower Bridge. By the 1960s, Tower Bridge's Victorian machinery was reaching the end of its practical working life. The old steam-driven system, while robust, was labor-intensive and not as efficient for the reduced number of openings. Moreover, London's new clean air laws frowned on so much coal burning in the city. In 1970, a major decision was made to modernize Tower Bridge's operating mechanism. Engineers planned to switch from steam hydraulics to an electro-hydraulic system. Starting in 1974, work began to install electric pumps and motors that would perform the same job as the steam engines, pressurizing oil instead of water to power the bascule lifting rams. Amazingly, this was all done without closing the bridge to river traffic. The new machinery was installed in parallel while the old system still functioned. In 1976, the conversion was complete. For the first time in 82 years, Tower Bridge's bascules were no longer driven by steam, but by electricity. The Grand Victorian engines were shut down and preserved. The bridge's lift control moved to a modern console, and one could raise the spans with the push of a button. The new system was smoother and required far fewer personnel to operate. Tower Bridge itself was by then recognized as a historic structure of great importance. It received a Grade 1 listing, a protected heritage status, in 1973, ensuring that any changes would be carefully controlled to preserve its character. The decades had seen the bridge painted and repainted. Its original color was a chocolate brown, which lasted until a bold new red, white, and blue scheme was applied for Queen Elizabeth II's Silver Jubilee in 1977. This patriotic tricolor added a fresh pop to the bridge's appearance, highlighting its details in red, white, and a bluish gray. By the early 1980s, the Port of London had shrunk dramatically, and Tower Bridge was lifting far less often than before. However, public interest in the bridge's history was growing. In 1982, the City of London opened the Tower Bridge exhibition, inviting visitors to explore inside the famous towers, walk the high-level walkways, and visit the Victorian engine rooms. After decades of being closed, the walkways were reopened, now safely enclosed and later enhanced with glass floor panels for views straight down to the road and river. Tourists could finally appreciate the panoramic vistas and imagine the thrill Victorian pedestrians felt up there. The engine rooms were restored and turned into a fascinating museum display, with the original green steam engines repainted and polished, pipes gleaming, and even the smell of coal and oil faintly in the air. What had been everyday industrial workspaces were now cherished historical exhibits. The bridge, still fully operational for vehicles, thus gained a second life as an educational attraction. In the 21st century, Tower Bridge's maintenance and preservation have continued with great care. A comprehensive refurbishment between 2008 and 2012 stripped off old paint and repainted the entire bridge in a new light blue and white color scheme. The red, white, blue from 1977 was retired in favor of this more traditional scheme. For over a year, sections of the bridge were shrouded in scaffolding and sheeting as decades of paint were painstakingly removed to prevent flakes from polluting the Thames. When the wraps came off, Tower Bridge shone as brightly as ever. The stone was cleaned, the metal trusses gleamed in fresh paint, and at night a brand new LED lighting system gave the bridge a vibrant presence after dark. The LEDs, installed in 2009 to 2012, are capable of changing color for special occasions, but on normal nights cast a dignified white and blue glow on the structure. During the 2012 London Olympics, Tower Bridge was a centerpiece of the city's celebrations. Giant Olympic rings were hung from the walkways, and the bridge was spectacularly lit and featured in the opening ceremony, including a memorable stunt in which James Bond, actor Daniel Craig, escorting the Queen, supposedly flew by helicopter through the bridge's open spans, a bit of movie magic that delighted the world. The bridge also hosted a one-of-a-kind musical performance in July 2012, a 200-foot-long light orchestra with musicians spaced along the West Walkway, their notes echoing across the Thames. These events reaffirmed Tower Bridge's status not just as infrastructure, but as an iconic symbol of London's creativity and history. Today, over 130 years since its opening, Tower Bridge remains both practical and symbolic. On an average day, about 40,000 people and 21,000 vehicles cross it, enjoying a toll-free route that connects the north and south of the city. To protect the aging structure, there are strict limits. For example, a 20 miles per hour speed limit and an 18-ton weight limit on vehicles. The bridge still opens for river traffic around 800 times a year, roughly twice a day on average. Most vessels that require a lift now are tourist cruise boats, tall-masted sailing replicas, or naval ships for ceremonial visits. Each lift is scheduled in advance and still draws a small crowd. There is a certain theater to watching the roadway pause and rise, just as it did in Queen Victoria's time. Culturally, Tower Bridge has transcended its original function to become a global icon. It is a postcard favorite, often mistakenly called London Bridge by newcomers. Indeed, an American tycoon famously bought the old London Bridge in the 1960s thinking he was getting this one, an enduring urban legend. The image of its two towers with the suspension chains and lifting roadway is used as an emblem of the city on innumerable films, souvenirs, and logos. Tower Bridge has appeared in Hollywood movies, from period pieces to James Bond thrillers, usually to instantly establish the setting as London. It also serves as a backdrop to daily life. Joggers crossing at dawn, photographers lining the banks at sunset, and couples capturing wedding pictures with its grandeur behind them. Despite its fame, when you stand on Tower Bridge, the experience remains humbling and visceral. You can feel a very slight vibration as traffic goes by, sense the hollow beneath your feet where the bascules span empty air, And if you listen closely on a quiet morning, you might even hear the faint creak of the giant metal structure breathing with temperature changes and movements. Tower Bridge was born out of Victorian ingenuity and necessity, yet it has aged into a timeless symbol of London. It stands where the medieval city meets the modern financial district, literally bridging different eras. On one side loom glass skyscrapers of the 21st century, on the other rises the ancient White Tower of the Tower of London. And between them, Tower Bridge holds its own, not as a relic, but as a living bridge that carries millions across the Thames each year. It embodies the spirit of a city that innovates while respecting its history. From the clamor of its construction in the 1890s to the quiet whir of its electric motors today, Tower Bridge has never ceased to fascinate and function. In rain and fog, sunshine and snow, it has watched over London's river traffic and road traffic alike. Stand on its walkways on a misty morning and you might conjure the sound of a steamship's whistle echoing up from below, or the distant clip-clop of Victorian horse carts on the cobblestones. Yet as the mist clears, you see the glass towers of the modern city and a procession of cars and double-decker buses crossing where carriages once rolled. The bridge is a constant, linking then and now. In the end, Tower Bridge's greatest achievement is not just that it was built, but that it endures. Iconic, operational, and beloved, it remains the iconic drawbridge over the Thames, an engineering marvel with a soul, forever lifting and lowering in a graceful ballet of iron and water. As we leave this story, imagine once more the calm of evening, the bridge's lights twinkling on the river, its towers steadfast and proud. Tower Bridge continues to stand guard over London, a monument of practical design turned into a monument of history and beauty, truly a bridge for the ages.